With my panel right now, we have Noel, Nick Poor, Paul Dietrich, and Courtney Dominguez. Paul, the one thing I'm wondering about here is you mentioned about what Wall Street expects, that the president won't be impeached. But if this is a lengthy trial, for whatever reason, does the uncertainty around that, the prospect of different witnesses, something that could drag on that pushes back potentially the president's State of the Union address for February 4th, he might still give it anyway. But measure all that for me.
I think this is the wild card, is having John Bolton and some other witnesses where they don't know what they're going to say, and it could have an influence. I don't think it's going to change the outcome. He's not going to be removed, but it could have influence on the election, and that's the real wild card on here. I don't think that it matters how long the impeachment trial is. I think everyone in America, especially people who are voting in Democratic primaries, say in Iowa, are going to be watching this. And so those senators who aren't in Iowa, they are going to be on MSNBC and CNN. And so I think they're going to get their message across. And I don't think they really care that they're in Washington and not in Iowa. The people of Iowa will be watching.
Well, those senators running do, right?
Right, absolutely. And I think, to your point, I think that the Democrats are waiting, minute by minute to see, how this plays out. Where a lot of the Republicans, this is getting lost in the shuffle. I mean, they want to, pay attention to, Trump speaking tomorrow at the World Economic Forum. They want to track what's going on that week. They want to talk about different things in the economy, the China trade. I think that the impeachment thing really, as far as Republicans, is going over their head. I think, back to your point, it is something that the Democrats are waiting minute by minute to see each kind of play of what's going on.
They hope, obviously, for something to drop. Democrats hope for something new to drop or something that would compel witness testimony or what have you. Mm-hmm. But the backdrop of this, as you were saying at the outset, you were all saying, is the strong economy, the strong markets. The president has a lot to crow about when he meets with his foreign counterparts in Davos, what have you. And that wins the day. What do you think?
I think that's still going to be the case. I mean, I don't think it matters how long the trial drags out, because if we take another example with the trade wars, that dragged out way longer than anybody expected, but it really didn't affect the underlying economy. And so I don't think another big headline that really doesn't change those fundamentals will affect that either.
All right, we're going to take a quick break here. We've got a couple of weeks till Iowa. By the way, FBN will be there. We'll be giving you special shows from that state. Senator Elizabeth Warren jumping on the Social Security spat that you might have seen Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders get in the middle of, after Sanders had accused Biden of actually supporting cuts. Take a look.
I believe that after a lifetime of hard work, people are entitled to retire with dignity. I have long supported expanding the Social Security system. I think everyone's record on Social Security is important.
All right, then Joe Biden entered the fray again, saying of Sanders that he was actually pushing a doctored video.
It's a flat lie. I have been a gigantic supporter of Social Security. This is a doctored tape.
It was not doctored. It was what it is. Time and time again, Joe Biden has been clear in supporting cuts to Social Security.
Back with my panel right now. This is a thorny issue for people. Social Security has a program like Medicare. These are the programs that cannot sustain themselves ad nauseum. So there have to be adjustments down the road. I'm not saying for retirees now or even those imminently retiring, but to ignore that doesn't exactly endear candidates. What do you think?
No, and I think that this fight, if you are a Democrat competing in this this presidential deal, I think that it is a smart argument that they're picking up because what appeals to most Americans is their retirement and how much they have.
And you don't want to risk it. It's bad news to even consider risking it, right?
Yeah, I think it's on a lot of people's minds. You want to know when we're retiring. Yep. Pensions are becoming obsolete, especially for people who are younger, maybe don't work for the government, so Social Security is a big source of income. So it's a big topic, and I think it probably will continue to be as we go forward.
Look, entitlements are the main driver of our deficits in this country, and if we do not get a handle on it, and Joe Biden hasn't supported cuts in Social Security. What he has supported was raising the retirement age, and if you think about it, when Social Security came into effect, the average life expectancy of a man back in the 40s during the Roosevelt era was 62 years of age. You worked, paid in, retired at 65, you died at 62. That's an actuarially sound system.
And you had 16 younger people paying in.
Exactly. And now that we're living into our 80s, you've got to raise the retirement age in order to get this on a sound financial footing.
But I don't see either party having the will to even talk about grandfathering that kind of thing in, right?
Well, the Republicans had a fairly strong position on this, but Trump was opposed to it, so it died.
Yeah, it's not
and we have a lot of CEOs that are, you know, I know people that are still working 81, 82, and, you know, like Carl Icahns. I mean, there are people that are still in the game, very relevant to their business, and they are well into their late 70s and 80s. So.
But then again, they don't need Social Security.
They don't need it, but I mean, other people feel like that they want to stay relevant. They may not be a billionaire, but they want to stay in the game.
I know people all the time who they're retiring and then starting a new business, new jobs.
Consulting.
Yeah, consulting.
But it's a real issue, and the Democrats do know that, so they don't want to get in the way. All right, the tax exodus continues. If you're in a high-tax state, and especially if you're a governor of a high-tax state, you're wondering where all your constituents are going, because they're going to low-tax states, Florida, Texas, the big beneficiaries, Nevada, what have you, a host of others. But that migration continues at now a rapid pace, so rapid that the governor of New Jersey is practically putting chains on people to prevent them from leaving, or at least make it very difficult if they are even entertaining the thought. I exaggerate to make the point that if you're in a high-tax state, you have to look over your shoulder and wondering if you'll have the very rich to pay the surtaxes and the like that a lot of them have been going after. The U.S. Census is showing that Texas's population, for example, grew by more than the entire population of high-tax Connecticut this past decade. Back with my panel now to explore that, Noel Nickpour, Paul Dietrich, and Courtney Dominguez. Courtney, it's obviously math for a lot of people, but what a lot of these governors of these high-tax states have discovered is you can go ahead and slap taxes on the rich, but money's mobile, and a lot of the rich are moving. What do you make of this?
Yeah, I think people really have to look at that. You even have people who are working their whole lives and they're moving in retirement because they realize, well, we can't afford it.
Right.
A lot of New Jersey, actually, most of their pensions are paid to people out of state because they're working in New Jersey, then they're leaving there because they can't retire there any longer, which is fascinating.
What do you think of that?
Well, I think that's exactly right, but I'm fascinated by the change in politics as people are exiting New Jersey, New York, and going to places like Atlanta, Northern Virginia, Texas, other places. I mean, you're seeing Atlanta change politically from a red area to a purple area because of all the northerners.
You even hear that about Texas. Austin's always been that way, but now it's getting right. And I wonder that. Be careful what you wish for, right?
Yeah, and that's a great point. Also, like if I do a fundraiser and I collect my checks at the end of the evening or the luncheon, I will look at all the checks to make sure everything's there. And about 80% of the checks either have a Texas address, they have a Florida address, even though the people are from New York or they're from other states, but they're.
Well, you were mentioning Florida. I mean, it's not all a free pass there. Real estate taxes are very high there, but even allowing for that, it's still a lot less of a tax burden than would be in a New York or whatever.
Right, and you made a really good point, which was great, by saying that even though the real estate taxes are high, you're actually getting something for it. Meaning, if you're in another state, the Jersey, you're just throwing it into a deep, dark hole where you might be paying a little bit more, but you're doing so on a home on a piece of property that you own.
They've always said, right, that if these high tax states could get their spending under control, I think on a per capita basis, the New York's government is twice as big as Florida's for roughly the same population, and a lot of people are saying there's something wrong there. And the tax package enacted a couple of years ago was supposed to compel people to sort of do the math and get states, especially high tax ones, to change their ways. I haven't seen them changing their ways, but what do you say?
Yeah, and we had this new tax law a couple of years ago, but you do have a lot of people affected where real estate taxes and local taxes are really high in places like New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. Actually, a lot of that has been capped for people, and so they do have to start to look around and say, all right, am I better off in a lower cost state where I'm not going to get capped for these taxes and or the taxes are lower?
Yeah, or they don't have taxes, period.
Exactly.
Right? So where do you see all of this going? I mean, it is a seismic shift going on. It's, to your point, picking up.
It's going to change politics, certainly. But, we've we've had a lot of experience with this. It's not like this is happening for the first time. And you get well-meaning but economically illiterate legislators who are trying to do something good, but it backfires. I mean, we see it in rent policies, in just all of the policies. It actually backfires, and it does exactly the opposite of what these legislators
But, you know, when
are
people
planning.
are polled, at least in my home state of New Jersey, that 7 out of 10 New Jerseyans support raising taxes on the wealthy. And yet you have the legislator's president who is a Democrat, saying you're going to chase your only base out of the state. Which argument ultimately wins?
You know, this is what, and I was going to ask everybody, I wonder how long it takes to transition a state from a New Jersey, a Connecticut, into a state that people want to come to, like a Florida or a Texas. I wonder how long it takes to transition towards a tax-free state, because are more and more people not seeing that, oh my gosh, you know, people are leaving my state, they're not bringing business industries in here. We're going to be just a land of ghost town if we don't change our tax policy. So I know
think
they
it's going to
know.
be glacial.
I agree. I mean, everyone wants to tax someone other than themselves, but you just
taxing them
can't
to
go
leave.
after a very small group of people who can just leave.
All right. Or you could be the royal couple, right? Prince Harry breaking his silence. We got Republican fundraiser extraordinaire Noel Nickbohr, Market Watchers Paul Dietrich, and Courtney Dominguez. Courtney, I'm just wondering, the impeachment stuff, does it enter into your equation on the markets? It's a great unknown. We kind of know how it's going to finish.
Yeah.
But play it out for me.
I think you kind of have to ignore some of these headlines that are out there, because whether it's impeachment or trade wars or Iran, there's always going to be something else around the corner. So you need to just make sure you're looking at how is the economy right now. And the economy is still on really strong footing. And for any of my clients or any of my investors, we're looking at your long-term time horizon. So while
What
I'm
is
very
long-term for them, your clients?
I mean, realistically, we're talking about your entire lifetime. But even over the next couple of years.
You get to my age, long-term gets to be lunch tomorrow. For the near term, is it still going to be a crazy ride? Because it's been like a melt up, right?
Yeah, I mean, most people on Wall Street understand that impeachment is not going to affect anything in the underlying economy.
What if you had a sudden call for witnesses and the two sides approve it, thereby potentially lengthening this drama out?
Still not going to affect anything in the underlying economy. And we have one example, the Bill Clinton impeachment, where from the beginning of the process to when he was acquitted, the market was up 28%. So.
No, that's a very good example. And Noel, one of the things that we've been saying that the two compare quite similarly is strong backdrop, the market, strong backdrop for stocks and the economy itself. One of the reasons why I think Bill Clinton survived that was because of that backdrop, because those at the corner wall and Broad, they love making money, and that was something they didn't want to see risk.
Right, and this is going to be very, very hard, Neil, because when you have a great, unbelievably great economic background going on, what exactly do you poke holes at? What exactly can you do? And looking at someone else, let's just say something happens and President Trump is gone. Everybody's going to want to continue on his economic policies to keep it status quo.
But every single one of the Democrats is going to raise taxes to some degree. So that would be a scare, wouldn't it?
Of course it was. And I think that is the reason why Elizabeth Warren did not really get a lot of Wall Street backing, because of the shock to the system, along with the fact that her economic policies really just didn't add up.
You know, one of the things that a lot of the administration officials have been touting, and maybe the president outlines it in Davos tomorrow, is that there's a lot more to come. There are going to be targeted tax cuts. Of course, I would imagine that would depend on a Republican House to work with the president on that. But that there are bigger, better things to come. There's another trade deal, or they hope a trade deal that won't be as nasty as we had with China with Europe. How is that all going to go?
All of these things are taking away a lot of the uncertainty that the markets have right now. Because when you look at last year, what I find really fascinating is, despite the fact that the markets did so fantastic in 2019, investors are still really nervous, and they have been pulling money out of the markets and adding money to money markets and bonds.
Well, that can be a healthy development, right? If there's enough skittishness out there, right?
Yeah, I actually see that as a positive sign, but you do have things like trade wars that have been overweighing investors' fears of getting their money invested. So getting a lot of that lifted, and if there is more to come, I see that as a really positive sign.
You know, this past week, weekend, Paul, I talked to Peter Navarro, of course, the trade advisor, is saying, I see Dow 32,000. When you think about it, that's about a 9% jump from where we are now, doable. Dow 30,000 is what, about 2% away. What do you think of all that?
I think that's doable. I expect to see 7 to 9% growth in the market this year.
Really?
If you look at the IMF reports that just came out this morning, they're projecting higher growth globally as well as in the United States. I think with the trade deal, which I found a bit disappointing, but it does for the Davos types. It gives a reprieve for any tariff chaos for the next year. And so I think this is going to be a good year for the markets. And I think, President Trump is going to use every lever of power at his disposal to keep this economic.
Every president does. Sometimes
every president
it works
does.
for him, not all the time.
It'll work for him through November 30th. And that's going to be good for the stock market.
All right, we shall see.